If you identify as a rhythm guitarist who can't play lead guitar, well, today we're going to change that. In fact, I'm going to show you that lead guitar has been under your fingers this entire time that you've been playing rhythm. And as always, be sure to stick around till the very end of the lesson because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar that you're both going to love. So if you're accustomed to playing rhythm, maybe you play bar chords all over the fretboard, you can play chord progressions all day long, but can't play solo to save your life. And maybe you think you got to start learning certain scales in order to start soloing. Well, I'm going to show you how to play lead guitar without the use of any scales, and it's all going to involve stuff that you likely already know. Let's start with bar chords. All right, so let's say we have a progression like this. Let's say we have A, C, G, and D. Classic indie rock-ish kind of progression, you know? Something like that, right? Sounds great, it's fun, it's driving, it's cool, it's fun to play rhythm with. But you got these bar chords, right? These major bar chords that are making up the entire progression. And get this, they're all the same shape. So we're keeping this bar chord shape throughout this entire progression. We're literally moving it to the different positions to accommodate the chords. So for A, we have our A bar chord here. So our first finger is going to be laid across the 5th fret. That's our A chord. And then for C, we bump it up 3 frets, 1, 2, 3. And then for G, we bring this all the way down here to the 3rd fret. And then for D, we're gonna bring it all the way up here to the 10th fret. Now here's the thing, those bar chords are chock full of notes, right? And that's what we like about bar chords, is that they make up these big, full sounding chords. But if we were to just take fragments of those chords and play them a little bit differently, we can access some serious lead guitar playing. There's actually a lot that we can do lead guitar-wise with just this little chunk of the chord. And if we adapt it to the other chords, right? We can actually follow the chord progression, playing over the chord changes by just keeping the same shape. And there's little things that we can do with it. We can break it up, we can add a couple notes here and there just to give us some more creative liberties, but there's a lot we can do with just this. In fact, one really popular thing that a lot of lead guitarists do is they'll play double stops, right? So double stops just being 2 notes played at the same time. So if we were to, let's say, take a look at like something like thirds, right? Which is just, if we were to just take this little chunk here, right? The 6th fret on the G string and the 5th fret on the B string. Just that, we're omitting 5th fret on high E for now. That right there. Right there, just by using that same shape. Notice how the shape stayed the same the entire time. I just moved it across the fretboard to match along with the chords in the progression. And then that was right there, that was just an example, but that's a coherent solo right there, you know? Kind of surfy, you know? And double stops are great for that. So if we were to just take the double stops, like this double stop of these different chords, we'd have 6th fret, 5th fret, and then 9th fret, 8th fret, then 4th fret, 3rd fret, and then all the way up here, 11th fret, 10th fret. Now remember, these are outlining the chords. We're just taking, that double stop is just a tiny little fragment of those chords, and we play it through like the progression, but just using these 2 notes, and then adding little things like little slides. And you could even just like, you know, maybe even subdivide the picking. Like. You can do all kinds of stuff like that, you know, getting your rhythm chops involved to actually make it sound even cooler. And another popular type of double stop for lead guitar are sixths instead of thirds. It's always fun to say that. So sixths, what they are essentially 2 notes that are a 1/6 apart. So if we were to take, let's say, the 6th fret, right, of the G string and the 5th fret of the high E string, and we were to connect it using the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these 2 notes are in a distance of 6 notes, hence the term sixths. And the same thing applies with thirds. If you hear thirds, fourths, fifths, whatever, they're just talking about the distance between those two notes when they're played, usually in a double stop kind of formation. So with the sixths, we have, which might already start to sound a little familiar. You hear this kind of stuff all the time in indie rock, surf rock, classic rock, country rock. I mean, it's all over the place. That kind of thing, right? Now, what if we were to take that across the whole progression? It would sound something like this. Kind of sounds a little bit like that famous CCR song, right? It's the same kind of idea. That is totally valid lead guitar. You don't have to be ripping scales in order to qualify as a lead guitar player, you know? And you can just take certain notes from the chords that you already know and adapt them to make a great sounding a solo that's actually very musically intelligent because you're following the chord changes rather than sticking to like a one-size-fits-all scale. And I mean, you could sit there and wail minor pentatonic, you know. That's totally fine too, but I mean, imagine even combining the two. So if you were to learn, you know, a certain scale, let's say you're kind of fiddling around with trying to get into the lead guitar world, right? You can actually fiddle around with stuff like, you know, and you can connect the dots doing something like that. There's really endless possibilities here. So just with those two little double stop ideas, the thirds and the sixths, all right? We can actually combine those two as well. You can do something like, you know, you could do that too, you know? Like I said, the possibilities are endless. It all just comes down to your imagination. And what really helps inspire musical ideas, honestly, just listening to lots of music. Music that really inspires you, that makes you want to pick up the guitar and start playing. That's usually when you're like primed, your brain is like ready to just try things out, right? And when you pick up the guitar, playing simple stuff like this and just give it a decent time feel, right? You got yourself a pretty solid sounding solo. I'm not even using a backing track or anything. You can hear the chord changes, hopefully, with what I'm doing because I'm just following them, right? So that right there is a great little example. Let's take it just one more step further. So if we were to add an additional note, let's say, ooh, that's pretty cool, like kind of like a little ninth right there. So if we were to take this chunk of the scale and then add this note here, and that can apply across all the chords, right? We can do stuff like, and then you got yourself like something that incorporates all that stuff, like the double stops, you know, and then you got like those additional little notes. So if you want to add like nice bends and stuff, this is a great place to do that. You can do a whole step bend here, like right the distance of 2 frets, or at least aim for that. What's the next chord? Here we go. That works too, and you don't have to bend every single time. It's just like, it's a good option. You know, you can even just go back and forth like, you can do something like that too. So just any combination, like what we just went over between the thirds, the sixths, adding that ninth note right there, in terms of like the scale degree, right? That's a ninth. Adding that note and then giving it some bends. You got so much to work with just this one simple progression that we just went over. By the way, real quick, if you're getting value out of this lesson, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. It really helps us out and it lets us know that you'd like to see more lessons just like this one. And believe me, we'd be more than happy to bring them to you. So thanks in advance, and let's get right back to it. Now you may be wondering, okay, we've gone over major bar chords, but what about minor bar chords? How do we work those in? Well, I'm glad you hypothetically asked. Let's take a look at that. So if I were to do a chord progression that added in a minor bar chord, let's do D, switch to middle pickup here. Actually, you know what? Neck pickup. Yeah, let's get some warmth in there. D, B minor, G, and A. We've already gone over like most of the chords in this progression, right? We went over D already, but now D is our tonic, our key, right? We went from the key of A to the key of D here just for this other example. Then we have the relative minor, B minor. So we have a minor bar chord shape, our one lone minor bar chord shape, and then we have our G and our A, right? So 10th fret, major bar chord, 7th fret, minor bar chord, 3rd fret, major bar chord, 5th fret, major bar chord. We can take the same exact principles here, but we're just changing slightly, really one of the notes, because these chords share a lot of the same kind of scale degrees. They share, they have root notes, they have fifths, but what's different really is the third, right? So take, for example, this D major bar chord. This major third here, that note right there, is really what signals the tonality of this chord, making it major. Check this out. If I were to flatten it and make it a minor third, ooh, totally changes now, right? I just changed one note. This one. I took that major third and I flattened it to a minor third. All the other notes stayed the same. So it really comes down to that one note. So really going between major and minor bar chords when we're trying out these ideas, we just have to keep the third in mind. All right, so we take this, and now let's take a look at the B minor chord here. Instead of this top part of the chord, that's the major third, we now have minor third. So we're just gonna be barring across the G, B, and high E strings on the 7th fret. It's those three notes. So we have, you already know with the D chord here, and then that's what it would look like with the B chord. And then we have the same thing with the G and the A chord that we've already covered. So it's really just this. That minor chord is the only really wild card in this situation, but all we did was change one note in that shape of the chord, that third, and that's what continues to give it that minor tonality. So if we were to try using those double stops in thirds, right? It sounds something like this. You can still hear which chord is major and minor just based on those two notes. Pretty cool, right? That's how significant the third is, right? That tells you everything. That's like the most significant piece of musical information between hearing the major or minor tonality in a chord like this. Now let's take a look at sixths. If we were to do same basic idea, but we're just adapting it to that minor chord. So if you're working with a progression that, let's say, has more minor chords, which most of the time major chords will outnumber minor chords in your typical kind of Western music song, right? Whether it's pop, country, rock, usually, unless it's a very, very minor tonality, or if it's a minor blues, let's say, for example, it's going to be majority minor, but for the most part, that's why, if you think about it, major in the name, it just makes sense that it is in the majority. But anytime you're encountering a minor chord in a progression, just change that third. And if you're doing thirds, sixths, you can make a great sounding solo, Another fun thing to do is a little chromatic walk up from the 4th to the 5th chord in the progression, right? So in this case, the 4 chord is G and the 5 chord is A, and it signals a resolution, because once we hear that 5 chord, we want to hear the 1 chord. That's just where it just kind of comes home. But when you're walking from a 4 chord to a 5 chord, you can do this fun little chromatic thing. It just makes it sound cheeky and colorful, but it's a lot of fun, and all you're doing is just walking this up 1 fret at a time, If you want to do it that way, Now let's talk about adding the 9th, right? Totally works here too, And if we were to do the bend, right? If we were to bend up on the 9th, When we get to the minor, we only want to bend up a half step, not a whole step, right? Because we're dealing with minor tonality. So you're bending up the distance of 1 fret. You know what it's starting to sound like? Hold on. It's starting to sound like... You know what I'm talking about. I mean, that was unintentional, but we just got a good glimpse on what Jimmy Page is doing in that Zeppelin song. You know what I'm talking about? Jamaica. So, how it has that kind of like reggae vibe, and how Jimmy is just essentially doing exactly what I'm showing you here, playing this lead guitar. And now he's doing it in a way that's more of like a part that follows the rhythm. But I mean, this could absolutely, constitute a solo, messing around with all the different ideas that we covered, combining the 6th, adding the 9th, doing the thirds, the double stop stuff. Just follow the chord progression and you got yourself a very musically mature sounding guitar solo. So now you know, the things that you need to play lead guitar have been under your fingers this entire time that you've been playing rhythm. And this is the perfect jumping off point for you to get started in lead guitar. And it's actually a great foundation to focus on like your rhythm chops, in the sense that you're following a chord progression when you're playing your leads. Because that's going to carry over when you start learning more scales and really expanding your repertoire as a lead guitarist. You're going to continue to think about the chord changes. It's going to turn you into a much more musically mature and impressive player. And speaking of jumping off point, you're actually in the perfect position for the free gift that I'm about to give you. That's actually going to take what we learned today and expand it to a whole new level, where you're going to learn how to solo in every musical key imaginable. How's that sound? Well, let me show you what I'm talking about here. This bad boy is your free lesson on how to instantly, and I mean instantly, solo in any key. So imagine taking the examples that we went over today, but being able to expand them in literally every musical key all over the fretboard. And it's yours today, absolutely free. Just be sure to click here to claim your copy, or check that link in the description box. This lesson that we've just gone through together is exactly what I wish someone told me when I first started playing lead guitar. Because it would have saved me years of breaking the bad habit of just sticking to a single scale and wearing it out without exploring all of the musical possibilities that were right there under my nose.